I'm gonna bring this to the end. Okay. Uh-oh. Testing, 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 testing. Okay, I think we're good. Okay, welcome back. Welcome back. So we are here on YouTube. I believe my mic is working because I see that moving. Hello. Hello, 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 hello. Hello. Okay. All right. So we're good here. We're good there. Now let's get right into and I hope I'm being heard. So I just want to double check here. So like if anyone can let me know on YouTube, like if the sound is coming through. If it is, then we'll get started because I know sometimes I get like some wacky. Okay, thank you, Lisa. I appreciate it. Okay, so let's get into it. So today, I did a poll. I'll probably do another poll at some point last week or next week to get a gauge for like what the next topic is. Now, yes, I'm wearing a beanie today. I have a hoodie on. It is 6 degrees right now, and the wind is whipping. So it is coming through the window right behind me. Now, before we get started, really quick, again, if you haven't checked out my ebook, Nature's Kitchen and Cabinet, I highly recommend it. Over 150 different herbs and superfoods that we have information on. So if you're looking to get started and really reclaim your own health, that I think is a fantastic place to start. Also, going to be coming out with my cleanse detox course. It's going to be called the Inside Out Detox. And that should be coming out maybe next week or the week after. I'm gonna try to put together something to get it. Uh, I'm super excited. I just did all the math. There's 10 hours worth of content broken up over what is it, 8 weeks? And on top of that, I have a 21-day meal plan that's included in there. And more importantly, you're gonna get access to how to scale up a detox and scale it down. And you can adjust it pretty much based on where you're at all times. Now, these are the same methods that I use with folks. These are the same methods that I use, with my patients, depending on where someone's at, where they want to go. I'm giving you all of it. My favorite herbal formulas, my favorite herbal blends that I like to use, tips on essential oils, my holistic first aid guide, all of it's included. So I'm super excited. I'm really proud of what I put together, and I can't wait to share it all with you. Um, it's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be coming out over the next, hopefully, couple weeks. I just got to finish building the pages, and we'll get it up. Okay, so let's get into dementia here as soon as I get my notes up. Okay, so we got to start off now. When we're talking about dementia and Alzheimer's disease, Alzheimer's, it's probably the most common form of dementia that we're aware of. Now there are other types of dementia too. We have Lewy body dementia, frontotemporal dementia, Huntington's dementia or Huntington's chorea, vascular dementia. They're all different forms of dementia, and the pathophysiology in terms of like and the treatment is going to roughly be very similar. Now, unfortunately, and I've done posts on this in the past last year. Even last year, this came out, and this is I think the first time I started talking about this because I think this is borderlining on criminal, which was about 99% of all the money that and research money that has gone into drugs for supposedly helping cure or reverse Alzheimer's disease was based actually on faulty research. The data that all of this stuff was based on was faulty. Somehow, no one ever checked into it. It came to light last year. So all that money, literally billions of dollars of taxpayer money, of government money, going into something literally for no reason. And you wonder why dementia drugs used for dementia have somewhere on the order of like a 99% failure rate. That's what happens when you base everything you do on faulty information. So, unfortunately, that's just kind of the mercy of where we're at and where things are right now. Um, what's really important here to understand is that, a lot of when we're talking about dementia and anything like that, these are all things that did not exist even like 100 years ago. And we're getting to a really dangerous place where all of this stuff is getting normalized. In other words, like it's just assumed that as we age, we start losing it. Meanwhile, this has really never been the case throughout history, not nearly to the degree that we're seeing it now. And just to like give you an idea with some statistics. So, roughly right now, it's somewhere between 5 and 6 Americans currently have just Alzheimer's disease, and it is the sixth leading cause of death. 1 in 3 seniors dies with or another form of Alzheimer's or dementia. That's staggering. That's 1 in 3. And we also know that every 66 seconds, someone in the US develops Alzheimer's. And Alzheimer's and other dementias kill more than breast and prostate cancer combined. And what's even crazier, the statistic is the treatment. So, and the cost. So, the cost for treatment of Alzheimer's is like 4 times the amount of what cancer is. So, if you think that cancer is going to be the thing that bankrupts this country, and as of right now, it's 50% of people are projected to get cancer at some point in their lifetime. Um, Alzheimer's is going to be even crazier. So, as far as the cost, now, according to the World Health Organization, like dementia costs the U.S. over $600 billion a year. And like, do we seriously need to be like doing more research on this? Because if the research is just to look for more treatments that we already know were, for the most part, based on faulty research back in the day, like, are we still going to want to invest into this, or is there something else going on here? Because if we don't figure it out, if we don't get to the bottom as to why this is happening, then we really need to figure out like what's going on. Now, before I jump into like some of this stuff, because I know someone's going to ask about the genetic part and is like, oh, we have like a certain APOE genetic risk factor, and so that means I'm more likely to get it. Um, and here's the thing, like we all have genetic predispositions towards certain things. But even if you have a certain variant or something in your genetic makeup that might make you more likely to get something, that does not mean that you are destined to get it. In fact, it's very unlikely, because remember that is going to be the driving force of it. Because remember, we have genetics and then we have epigenetics, which when you translate it literally means above genetics. So we have a controller above genetics that is dictated by the choices we make every single day. So even if you have a certain APOE, gene mutation, it's not going to mean that you're going to get it or get some amyloid plaques, or you're going to start losing it when you're 55 or 60 or whatever. Stop. Like that needs to stop right now, because you have to remember the rates that this is growing right now never existed at any point in history. I promise you, these genes that we all name existed right before we figured it out that they did before. So it can't just come out of thin air and cause those types of issues. We have to start taking it a step back further, and realizing, hey, maybe there's something, going on that is causing a bit of an issue here. And if we don't, then we're going to be in real trouble. And it's crazy because, like, when you look at some of these organizations, like including the CDC, so they will say there are a number of studies that suggest behaviors that might lessen the risk of developing the disease, that is dementia, by the way. Among these are increasing physical activity, having a diet rich in fruits and vegetables, maintaining social engagement, and participating in intellectually stimulating activities. Listen, folks, like even the CDC gets it to like a point here. Like if we don't take a step back and like get away from the TV that is telling you this, I mean, even the CDC, like, and it's funny because if you go on the CDC, like the .gov website, they what the messaging that gets you told on TV and some of the stuff on their website does not match up. Like even the CDC knows that physical activity, lots of fruits and vegetables, social engagement, and intellectually stimulating activities are all going to help reduce the risk of dementia. But that's not the messaging we hear. The messaging we hear is we need more money for research. We need more money for research. This is a problem. We need a drug. But they admit it on their website. And they even go further to say other conditions can also cause dementia or dementia like symptoms, including reactions to medications, nutritional deficiencies, infections, poisoning, brain tumors, anoxia or hypoxia, which is a lack of oxygen. This is the CDC telling you, hey, these are all the most likely causes or things that are going to put you at risk for dementia. It's not a lack of a medication. It's not the lack of anything else. They're telling you what they are. And they're right. Yet that's not the messaging, we hear on a daily basis. Now, what most doctors and organizations will tell you is that like generally speaking, when we're talking about dementia, it's the development of these proteins called beta amyloid plaques. They damage vessels that supply blood to the brain. They can cause clumps of proteins in the brain, which are Lewy bodies. They could damage the blood supply. Like I said, that's vascular dementia. If you have beta amyloid plaques, that's Alzheimer's disease. They're all just different forms of the same thing. If you have a combination of them, then it's mixed dementia. But all forms of dementia have something in common, and that is essentially a reduction in nerve cells or loss of nerve cells over time. So, this is where, again, like if you check out the post I made this morning, like this is why this is important because, in my opinion, there are 10, main causes of dementia, Alzheimer's, anything that kind of falls under that umbrella. There's about 10 different main causes. Now, these are in no particular order, so I'm just going to kind of go through the list as I have them. The first is mercury and other heavy metals. Now, a big one of these obviously is dental fillings. My wife's a dentist, so that's just something that comes up a lot. But heavy metals can come in a lot of things, different types of injectables, different types of things we put on our skin, could be conventional food supply. Like there's plenty of ways that you can expose yourself to heavy metals on a regular basis. And if we have excess heavy metals, especially things like aluminum or mercury or cadmium or arsenic, these are known to cause neurological damage. And if there is an excess of these over a long period of time, that's going to cause some neurological issues. So heavy metals definitely play a big role. I have anecdotally seen, and I know I have heard stories of folks who get mercury amalgams removed. Um, that their neurologic symptoms, maybe they'll have like tremors, or maybe they'll have like really excessive brain fog to the point of like forgetfulness, and they will almost immediately or within 24 to 48 hours feel significantly different. Maybe the tremors stop. Like it's pretty miraculous. Um, Statins, or really a lot of prescription medications, these are big. So statins, for example, they lower cholesterol, which accounts for like 50% of the weight of your brain. Now you need cholesterol. Most of the cholesterol circulating in your body is actually made in the liver. It's not dietary. It's a small percentage, somewhere like 10 to 20% of the circulating cholesterol in your body is actually from the diet. It's made if there is some sort of inflammation, that's when it rises. So if I am reading a lab report and I see cholesterol's high, usually I'm looking, okay, what's the inflammatory response somewhere in the body? So kind of important. Stress, stagnation, and inactivity. This is huge. It literally, and this is another reason why I hammer home exercise and it's a non-negotiable, is because if you stop moving, if you are living a sedentary lifestyle and not using your muscles and moving around, that literally shrinks your brain over time. So the more you sit around and do nothing, the more you will essentially be inhibiting your brain. And this is why, one of the reasons why movement is really so important and connected to um, mental acuity, especially as we get older. Because if we're moving, if we're dialing in all these different movement patterns and doing different things and training different movement patterns, those are all sending different signals to the brain to learn and relearn. So staying physically active is 100% key. Hormone imbalances. Now, most hormones, and this is where iridology is really important, because if you look at 12 o'clock, right above, unfortunately, I don't have a graph on me, but you have the pituitary and pineal gland there right above where the transverse colon is. And we already know how there's a gut brain connection. That's one of the ways we finally figured out that the integrity of the gut affects the rest of your body. I actually talk about this in the course a little bit. But the pituitary gland is essentially the main controller of all our hormones. Um, actually, we call the pineal gland the third eye. The pituitary is actually associated with the seventh chakra, right? The crown chakra. That's actually the pituitary, because that is the master controller. So if the pituitary is off, that's going to affect every other hormone: thyroid hormones, adrenal hormones, sex hormones, mineral corticoids, which affect um, fluid levels in the body, electrolytes, sodium, potassium, calcium, all of it. All of these can lead to inflammation. That's a big cause. Artificial food colors, flavors, and sweeteners. These are endocrine hormone disruptors and gut disruptors. So if we have issues in the stomach or in the transverse colon, that could affect the brain. That's going to affect your hormones. Like, are you starting to see how this is starting to come together a little bit? And again, when I go through iridology readings, if I see that, that's something I will point out on the chart to people, so you can get an understanding of how all these things are coming together. Nutritional imbalances and deficiencies. Now, this is due to one of two reasons commonly, because I always get questions on what's the best source of magnesium, what's the best source of selenium. Pick a nutrient, doesn't matter. The issue usually is there's either poor gut function, poor gut integrity, so malabsorption, or maldigestion, so not able to break down your food or not being able to absorb your food, or dysbiosis. And both of these can be caused, again, by medications, by poor nutrition, by poor sleep, stress, etc. Drugs are huge. So statins, again, well known to deplete many of these nutrients like B12 and folate and magnesium and selenium. Birth control is a big one too. A lot of different B vitamins. So nutritional imbalances can do it. Insulin resistance. We know that dementia, Alzheimer's, is known as type 3 diabetes. That's because if our blood sugar is out of whack, it's really going to be affected by it's going to affect the brain long term. We know that, actually, if you start damage in the brain, usually starts like 30 years before you ever start having any symptoms of dementia. So in other words, what we're doing now, I'm 30 years old. So what I'm doing today is going to affect my 60-year-old brain. And if we're not looking at things through that lens, then it's going to be pretty difficult. Um, Social isolation or lack of social support, not having a social support system. Listen, at the end of the day, me even being, an introvert, a lot of reasons why I come on here is for some sort of social connection. I'm very lucky to have a small group of friends who do not necessarily agree with me on everything I say, but they are people that, I love, and it makes me feel a lot better. For example, I went out with two of my friends last night for dinner, and that was it. And it makes you feel better. If we do not have that social connection, you can see deterioration happen a lot quicker. And the last one is more emotional. So remember, we have physical, chemical, and emotional stress in the triangle of health, the triad of health: physical, chemical, emotional. Um, is usually unresolved adverse childhood events or some sort of, childhood traumas. If we don't ever address it, and we keep pushing it deeper into the body, it's going to, come out one way or another. And in one way that can do it is a form of dementia later on. So that's kind of important. So, if we break some of these down further, so like heavy metals, like timerosol. So this is going to be in a lot of different injectables. You'll see it as ethyl mercury, We do not want to be putting things like that in your body. That's not good. Again, amalgam fillings, your flu shots, etc. This is just something that's an ingredient. You could check the inserts. We don't want to be putting heavy metals in our body. It's just not ideal. We don't want to be doing that. If we can get away from ethyl mercury and other heavy metals, that's going to be much better for our long-term health. So that's one thing. Aluminum is also another one. So, aluminum is another one you could find in different, injectables. And we know that this can cause or lead to dementias if we have that accumulation of heavy metals. And it's another reason why cleansing, detoxification, getting all that done, doing that, a few times a year, really, really helpful. And again, another reason why I'm creating this course. It initially started as a heavy metal detox course, and then I decided why not just expand it. So that's what I did. So aluminum, that's a big one. We know now, children up to 6 months of age receive somewhere between 15 and 50 more aluminum from injections than the FDA safety limits allow. So, all not ideal. Statins or cholesterol lowering drugs. So we talked about how important cholesterol is, but statins also, well, they will suppress usually the synthesis of cholesterol, so you're not creating enough. But it also depletes uh, neurotransmitter precursors, so the things we need to make neurotransmitters, and coenzyme Q10. So coenzyme Q10, if you don't know, is needed for proper, especially heart contractility. The heart's the most constantly working muscle in the body. It doesn't shut off until we eventually die. It's also needed for proper neurological function. So, and and what's interesting is, like, when you stop statins, a lot of these effects will actually come back. So, stress and inactivity. So, you know, again, we have a sympathetic nervous system and we have a parasympathetic nervous system. And if we are constantly stressed, we're in that sympathetic dominant state. What happens is, from that pituitary down to the adrenals, and again, HPA axis, hypothalamus, which is essentially the connector between the nervous system and the endocrine system, the pituitary, which is again the master endocrine gland because it kind of controls everything underneath, and then the adrenals, which are responsible for actually creating the cortisol. HPA axis, you'll hear this as HPA dysfunction, you'll hear it as adrenal fatigue. They're all kind of the same thing, just with different names. So if someone says, oh, adrenal fatigue's not real, but HPA axis dysfunction is, it's literally the same thing. So I don't know what to tell you. Anyway, when there's too much cortisol, this is great. We have this sympathetic fight or flight response when we need it, when we need to run away, when we need to get away from something, when we need to do it. But then it's supposed to shut off. And the problem is, if we're constantly stressed, if we're constantly stagnant and not moving, that's going to lead to excess cortisol. That's going to lead to inflammation. That's going to lead to that imbalance of hormones, like too much cortisol. That's going to lead to cognitive impairment, because if we're in a high cortisol state all the time, tissues are constantly being broken down. It's actually also going to lead to high blood glucose, because one of the things cortisol does is liberate glucose from cells, from glycogen, to go into the bloodstream to be used for energy. So, and when you're not using it for energy, then the glucose has to go somewhere. It ends up being stored as fat. Big thing. Hypertension, it's going to lead to that, and also more susceptibility to disease, because if we're in a constantly fight or flight mode, the imperative, the dominant ideal is supposed to be, we have to stay alive right now. We're not necessarily worried about the immune system if we don't make it to tomorrow. And living a sedentary lifestyle, poor blood flow, poor lymph flow. Those are the two. The blood is what supplies all of our tissues and cells. The lymph is what cleans everything up. If those are not moving properly, then we're not going to be cleansing our system. It's going to lead to issues with healing on every level. So not great. Again, we also know if we're moving around, that's going to positively influence cognitive function because moving around in integrating different movement patterns is has a direct effect on the brain because the brain has to interpret that stuff and then also support it and build on those new movement patterns. So movement literally is training for the brain. So have to move. And we know that physical activity reduces the long-term risk of dementia, especially Alzheimer's. It also counteracts neuronal loss and behavior deficits. And again, one of the nice things about it is exercise actually increases angiogenesis, which is the building of blood vessels, neurogenesis, which is the building of nerves, synaptogenesis, which is creating new connections in the brain, and the synthesis of neurotransmitters, which allows the brain to process and communicate better with not only within itself with other nerves, but the rest of our body. So that's huge. Thyroid. So I've done videos on this, and I believe most thyroid problems are actually just stress adrenal problems. And the thyroid just happens to be kind of caught in the middle and is usually one of the first tissues affected. So we know now roughly around 20 million, it's probably a little bit higher, Americans have hypothyroidism. Now the thyroid is really important because it communicates with the brain, different glands, hormones, and cells and tissues in the body. I call the thyroid the gas pedal. It essentially tells the body to either speed up metabolic processes or slow them down. And if it's slow, that's when you feel sluggish. That's when you might feel like you're losing hair. You just might feel lethargic all the time. So that can definitely be part of it. So with thyroid, the stress part is absolutely number one because the adrenals and stress, and I've talked about this in a different video, but are intimately related. So if you are in a high stress, high cortisol state, that is going to negatively impact your thyroid gland. And I believe that's the majority of what thyroid issues actually are. They're adrenal issues. And if we don't address the adrenal issues, then the thyroid's not necessarily going to be in good shape. Iodine's really important. I really like different types of seaweeds, dulse, chlorella, spirulina, um, kelp, whatever you like. Those are my favorite sources. Selenium is also really important. So Brazil nuts, different nuts and seeds, really kind of important for selenium, leafy greens. So those are really important for thyroid health. Um, Inflammation. Now we were talking about that a little bit before. Now we have certain immune cells in the brain that are called microglial cells, and these are essentially the macrophages. They're a certain type of white blood cell in the brain, and what happens is if there's inflammation, then you'll have these glial cells, these microglial cells being more active, and that could potentially lead to this amyloid plaquing. Now, remember, when we're talking about the different types of dementia, Alzheimer's is the amyloid plaquing type. You have vascular dementia, which is a blood flow issue. You have Lewy bodies, which is a different type of dementia. But they're all different types. But the point is that might be a reason for these plaques. So inflammation in the brain due to that oxidative stress. And again, how do we lower that? It's going to be more antioxidant rich foods. That's going to be a lot of especially fresh, raw fruits and vegetables. You can try juicing, you can try cleansing, you can try um, different types of high antioxidant herbs, dandelion, nettles. You could things like that are really helpful on that front. But yeah, more high antioxidant foods are going to be really, really helpful. Reishi mushroom, chaga mushroom, lion's mane, all of which are going to be really helpful. Artificial food colorings. So again, some of the big ones that we talk about, aspartate or aspartic acid. This leads to a hyperexcitability of neurons, which could eventually lead to degeneration. We have phenylalanine, which is going to reduce serotonin and dopamine. So that's going to have a negative effect on the gut. How do we know? Most of the serotonin and dopamine in the body is actually manufactured in the gut by bacteria and then shifted up into the brain. So that's how that works. Um, aspartame, another mess. I mean, we know this, it's terrible, right? It disturbs amino acid metabolism, can denature proteins, break down nucleic acids, affect endocrine function, neuronal function. It's a mess. So, that's a really kind of big issue. As far as, some of the nutrients that, are big that we need to kind of look at, vitamin C, CoQ10, we already talked about. So foods rich in those. I think the fat soluble antioxidants, so A and E, that's a big one too. So, obviously your orange, your yellow, different types of fruits and vegetables. Those could be really helpful. Vitamin E, largely found in nuts and seeds, but also leafy greens. So that's a big one. Zinc. So we know that getting enough zinc is really important. And again, I generally don't like supplementing with individual nutrients. I would much prefer, we get them from different types of foods. But we do know that low zinc is associated with Alzheimer's disease, and usually because zinc is at one of the functions of zinc is it helps maintain healthy blood sugar metabolism. So if we're low on it and it could lead to potentially insulin resistance. This increases inflammation, which reduces immune response or a proper immune response and can lead to what we call autoimmune type damage. It can also impair wound healing abilities. Low zinc is also associated with things like increased aging. Again, low immune system function, so more susceptible to infections, which could lead to more inflammation. It also leaves you actually more susceptible to copper toxicity. So zinc and copper have to be balanced appropriately. So if we're low on zinc and copper dominant, that could be an issue too. So you're starting to see how all of these things are related, I hope, because you know if there is a lot of different factors here that can play a role, but almost all of these are pretty much connected and reversible. And it does take, a little bit of time and effort, but it is something that can be, really fixed. So, again, a lot of different fresh fruits and vegetables, nuts and seeds. I believe that should make up the majority of your approach. If you have one of these issues, if you have to get, metal components removed, mercury fillings, stuff like that, if you're getting, medications that have heavy metals and you don't need them, ask your doctor why. And if you can stop them, that's fantastic. Other medications like ask, see if you can get off of them because it makes a big difference. Um, folate, so low levels of B9 or folate associated with, higher episodes of Alzheimer's disease. Also, different types of dementias like Lewy body or corticobasal or Parkinson's. So, and this is important because B9 or folate's needed for methylation. So if we're not methylating properly, that's going to affect our detoxification pathways. It's going to affect gene expression. It's going to affect brain function. So all of these things are related, and really helpful. Turmeric or curcumin, super powerful anti-inflammatory. So that's something that can be really, really helpful when we're talking about, reducing inflammation, especially in the brain. Now, other of my favorite anti-inflammatory herbs, they're going to include things like clove, things like frankincense, both of which actually I really enjoy the essential oils. And you could check those out if you go to my page. You can check those out. Frankincense essential oil, clove essential oil, both great. I really like the doTERRA ones. You can check them out. I think they're of high quality. You could check them out if you want to get them there using the link in my bio. Those are great. Turmeric's great. I mean, it's something you can cook with. You can cook with cloves too. I mean, all of these are super powerful anti-inflammatories that are really helpful. Coconut's great. So, if you happen to cook, maybe using coconut oil occasionally, getting rid of those inflammatory oils. The only two that I keep around are coconut oil and extra virgin olive oil. So, Can you use that? Turmeric's great. So, like, if we start, it's Dale Bredesen. That's the last guy I want to talk about. So, a long time ago, a few months ago, when I first was talking about this, Dale Bredesen, he's a professor of neurology at, I think, UCLA. And, when they followed his protocol, um, they were able to, 9 out of 10 people were able to reverse their cognitive decline. And his protocol, I had to just kind of copy and paste it. So I have it here. It included eliminating all simple carbohydrates, eliminating gluten and processed foods, increasing vegetable, fruit, and non farm fish intake, reducing stress with yoga and meditation, increasing sleep from 4 to 5 hours a night to 7 to 8 hours a night. The supplements he recommended were B12, vitamin D, CoQ10, and fish oil every day. He tried optimizing oral hygiene, so using an electric flosser and electric toothbrush. He also did fasting for a minimum of 12 hours between dinner and breakfast, and at least 30 minutes of exercise 4 to 6 days a week. Again, just doing that, 9 out of 10 people able to reduce or reverse their cognitive decline. And that is, to me, like, as far as going, like, that is very minor when you're talking about um, lifestyle changes, and that's impressive. So if you're looking for answers, that's essentially it. That's what we got. This is a disease, that is, or dis-ease that's largely earned. Do not get hoodwinked into thinking that some one genetic factor is going to completely throw your life apart. No, it's the actions, and it's how you interpret that that's going to do that. Um, that's going to be, the bigger thing here. Some other herbs, I guess I should mention. I'm not going to go too far into it because I did a post on it today, but ginkgo, ginkgo biloba, that's going to be really good. Godu kola, both of those are really great for increasing blood supply to the brain. Lion's mane, fantastic for increasing brain derived neurotrophic factor, which you need to essentially build new neurons. What else did I have on that list? Schisandra is really good as an adaptogen, but also helps with detoxification support. So that might be something that's useful for, if there's some sort of detoxification issue, or if heavy metals are an issue. Schisandra is really good. Um, what else? What else? What else? I know there was another one. Oh, St. John's wort, which is really good for just general neurologic brain neurologic function. St. John's wort's really good. And skullcap, great for nervous system disorders. So I talked about all those more in my Instagram post today, so you could learn a little bit more about those. You could also learn more about those in my ebook, which I highly recommend. I also talk about, my favorite place to get formulas that have all of them, and what my favorite companies are. But I really like the MediHerb stuff. I think their stuff is really high quality. So I largely tend to lean to them. A little bit more costly, but worth it. But there's a few others I like too. For the mushrooms, though, I do like, what is it? Host Defense, which is also on my full script. So you can check that out. All different types of mushrooms. I actually really like theirs. I think they make good stuff. Okay. That's what I got. That's dementia. I hope this was helpful. Again, you got to fix the gut. If you haven't noticed, I got my new digestive tract picture up here in the background. So that's where all this stuff starts. That's, again, why I think iridology is so important. That's why I practice it. And that's why I show people that, because it's a great way to show how the gut is involved with every system in the body. Yeah, check that out. My Inside Out detox masterclass is coming, so keep an eye out for that. Probably going to be in the next couple weeks. Hope you have a lovely, lovely weekend, and I will see you guys next week. Have a good one. Bye. Okay.